Hi, everybody.
Okay, welcome, Dana. It's good to see you. We see you. Welcome to everybody that's here, and we'll go ahead and get started. We have already done the roll call. I need a motion, please, to approve the minutes from October 7, 2020.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, Mr. Hugh Rawls seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Then
Dana,
we
you
ask
with us?
Dana, she can hear us.
I was trying
Can you hear us,
to,
Dana?
before the vote, they need to change. I was present virtually, not in person.
Okay. And did you hear us okay?
Yes, sir.
Good. So all in favor, say aye, and you gave us a thumbs up.
With the change, yes.
She was virtual.
Oh, change. I see. I got you. Okay. Is that taken care of inside? All right. Thank you. All right. I have a few comments, just maybe a moment of inspiration. I wanted to read the words of a song about our great republic written by Catherine Lee Bates in 1893. She was a Massachusetts school teacher. And when she climbed Pikes Peak, she wrote these words a few days later because of what she saw. And we're all familiar, but I'd like to just read it for the sake of celebrating our republic. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. Oh, beautiful for your heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. Oh, beautiful for patriots' dream that see beyond the years. That thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. And I'm sure those words warm our hearts as we go through an election process and enjoy our great country and our great privileges and freedoms that we have. That'll be the end of my comments. Are there any public comments at this time? No public comments? And we're going to try to be very punctual with our meetings so that we're done by 1, of course. And I'm going to turn it over to John for the monthly airport update.
Thank you, Judge. This is going to be a very abbreviated briefing. Request of Ms. Lowe, we're going to wait until next month to give you a recap of fiscal 2019 and 2020. But I do have a couple slides to show here. If we can bring up one PowerPoint slide, please, Courtney.
Can you hear John good? No? John, you need to sit in my chair, I guess. Ask her if she can hear you now.
Yeah, Courtney, how's this? There we go. Next slide, please. It's our operation. Operations are our landing and takeoff. One landing is one operation, takeoff is another. So our traffic is similar with last year. Next slide, please. And this is for the month of October. We kind of smoked last year's numbers, but don't get too excited. There was a good reason we did not sell much fuel last October. We switched over to the new fuel system, credit card system last year, and that took about a week or so of downtime. And then right on its heels came nasty weather for a week or two. October was one of the worst, if not the worst month I have seen in 100 low lead sales for those two reasons. But still, 10,000 gallons is a pretty decent number under all normal circumstances. Jetted down a little bit, but I've been very, very pleased with fuel sales throughout the coronavirus. It hasn't hurt us that awful bad. And this number, it's not unusual to see this number fluctuate by that amount. You know, 2 or 3 jets could change that. Next slide, please. And bottom line in the green there, we're a little bit ahead of where we were last October, fuel wise, profit wise. And again, it's just for the month of October, the beginning of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. This number is incorrect. And I just got it corrected with Logan a few minutes ago. We are right at $404,000 in that debt. It used to be 1.4 million. So she's coming down. So 3 more payments on that, and it's ours. And the numbers representing what we received this year. Thank you very much, Mr. Kyle. And the 1.274 from the FDOT is for our T-hanger project. And next slide, please. Kind of a recap. Some of this was on last month's slides. No change. Matt and Andrew, you think anything to add? Go ahead. But it's and next slide, please. Everything at the airport is rented. So we need new stuff. And next slide, please. And we've had a lot of lightning damage. We're in the process of getting that repaired. Fortunately, it's all covered by insurance. Taxiway Charlie, we had to replace the wire from the electrical vault all the way out to the south end of the airport and back because the entire loop for the Taxiway Charlie got fried. And we had to replace all of the transformers and light bulbs. The only thing we were able to save was the stanchions and the cement in the ground. Massive job, massive.
How much was that?
Don't know yet. The initial, just the wire was like 16,000. We paid 16,000 so far, and I'm going to guess that's going to double, if not more.
Wow.
We haven't gotten the second bill yet from the electric company. Our automated weather system, the computer inside the terminal building got hit, and we got that in the works. We're having to have a custom-made computer that's synchronized with our sensors out on our airport. airports up north will have sensors that can tell the difference between snow and sleet, or, hail and ice pellets. So every computer is kind of custom fit to the sensors that are out on the airfield. And I don't know if you've ever seen these sensors. They're pretty cool. This is like NASA stuff that detects the visibility and the barometric pressure, wind direction, and all the information the pilots need. Had the gates hit twice, two gates. Our precision approach path indicators, which are those 4 red lights you can see from Moody Road if you've ever looked out over the field. That gives a pilot an indication of, are they coming in at the right angle for landing? One of those got hit by lightning. And our communication line with our fuel credit card machine got hit. Fortunately, we had a backup that we were able to stay in business until we got the main zip line repaired. And I don't know if anybody saw, talking about airport activity, we had a terrific thing happen out of the airport this weekend. The round canopy parachute team brought in, I guess, in about, 150, 200 members throughout the country, and had a Operation Black Cat, where they jumped with round parachutes all weekend long. And this particular operation honored Vietnam vets. So there were a lot of Vietnam vets. And I just talked to them a little while ago, and they said, a number of them came up and said, this is the first time anybody ever recognized us. And there was a lot of tears, and so I think it was a very successful, no doubt. And Mr. Pee Wee Martin, who was the 97-year-old World War II vet who parachuted into the Normandy, at the Normandy last year during the 70th anniversary ceremony, he came and parachuted with Art Schaefer again. And he spoke Saturday night. And I got to hear him talk, and he's just brilliant. He's 107, got the mind of a 30-year-old. He's written a number of books, and he talked about his experience in World War II. And then it was a B-52 co-pilot that was shot down in Vietnam, and he and his crew spent a little bit of time in the Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp. He spoke for about an hour, talking about his getting shot down in time served. And but it was just an outstanding event, So hopefully those things will grow, and maybe even build a headquarters here someday for them. So, and we are still looking to hire a part-time. I need some help behind the counter and stuff. I think we have about 9 or more applicants that I plan on getting with Courtney today to start working on it. And, so hopefully we'll have recommendations for a hire here soon. And that concludes my briefing.
Does anybody have any questions for John?
Thank you, Courtney.
And John, there's been quite a few jet visitors, haven't there, lately?
We did. Last week, I was surprised that the jet sales were low, because we had a number of jets come in this past week. And the Huey helicopter that they jumped out of bought gas. I was surprised they worked out like I expected them to beat last year, but that's the way it goes sometimes. But we have been doing pretty well with jet sales so far.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate that report. Next on our list is Andrew's presentation with the strategic planning. And Andrew, again, from the advisory board, we all want to say thank you for your hard work and your efforts to help us be what we are and plan on being too. So thank you, sir. The floor is yours. And if you can't hear, let us know.
I'm just checking with Dana. Dana, can you hear me okay? Dana, can you hear me okay? Yeah, maybe I'm pulling over. Oh, thank you. How about now? Is that
Can
better?
you talk a little bit louder?
Yep, how's that? Testing. That better?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we've been talking the past few months about having some strategic discussion, visioning about basically the facilities on the airport, ways to make money and things like that. And instead of going back to the drawing board, we talked a little bit last month about projects and things that are on the wish list. What we created today, actually what Matt created for you today, the graphics emailed earlier, they'll be up on screen. We prepared a series of graphics that show the list of projects that are scheduled to receive FA funding in the next few years, FDOT funding in the next few years, or projects that are on your wish list CIP that don't have any funding identified. And then we identified 4 areas of vacant land around the airport to talk about what the city's approach would be to get some development, whether it's aviation activity or ways to make money on the 4 primary open lands. The source of information that developed this, it goes back to the airport master plan. Many of you were actually on the advisory committee for the airport master plan, which is almost 10 years old now. And then there's an automated CIP that goes to the FAA and the DOT each year. We talk about that here each year. We also have a face-to-face meeting with both the FAA and the FDOT staff to talk about what's on that list. Does it still match what the airport needs, what we hear from the AAB? And then both the FAA and the DOT look at the wish list and determine this is where they think is the most appropriate place to put funds. Matt's got a little bit of a patriotic theme going. I saw it this morning that we do have a list of red projects, blue projects, and then green and orange. So the first page you see here has got everything listed on top of it. It's a lot easier to comprehend when we go one by one. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, can you zoom in on that a little bit on the actual airport map? No, next page. Can we zoom in on the slide at all? That one. Perfect. Okay, so these red projects, these are the projects that the FDOT has identified some level of project funding for the next 5 years. The small area up on top is the T hangar, which is under design right now. There's an access road project, which is that basically the snaking red line, which will bring us the new entrance from the east section of the airport. The rectangle beneath that is a hangar and lighting project, which could come next year. There is a corporate hangar in the center, which we have called the Palatka Jet Center site between the terminal building and the existing hangars on the east. And then you notice there's actually a proposed runway extension to 927 to the west. There is a 1,000-foot runway extension, at least in the planning and environmental stages to consider after the year 2025. I just want to note one thing about that is that there is no aircraft operating at the airport today that warrants the need to spend the money to extend the runway. And it's very much a catch-22 situation that we typically do not extend runways in the state of Florida with either state or federal money until there is a documented demand and need to extend the runway. So it's out there, and it's been out there in the 5-year period, really since the master plan was complete. So if the time does come that the city can have the opportunity to extend the runway to take care of a new aviation need, they can. So we don't really know if that will happen 5 years from now. So again, everything on this list is something that either came from the master plan, came from CIP discussions with the DOT, or came from the airport board as something that's needed. And we'll talk a little bit more about who might occupy some of these facilities in a minute. So next slide, please.
Andrew, can we
Yes,
pause
Joe.
for just a minute?
Yes.
So before we get too far ahead and need to come back, is there any discussion that any board members or staff want to make concerning what we're looking at with this red selection? And it's a good time to discuss our thoughts and feelings as well as to question Andrew on any details.
Okay.
of
We can
each
do
one
that
of
right
those
now.
points.
This is the FDOT project slide. And again, there's basically one or sometimes 2 projects per year in each year of the CIP with the DOT. They do an exceptional job of planning their CIP 5 years in advance and identifying projects and dollars in each year.
So you'll have to go to the microphone. I can, right here, I can stand right here, I'm okay. So Andrew, I remember us talking when we put the runway extension in there, it was kind of like the chicken or the egg deal, you know.
Yes, sir.
Is that changed with the FDOT now, or, I mean, they are probably not gonna fund it unless we have a need, which would put us behind the curve?
You know, Wayne, that's why we actually have it 5 years out. Every year when we revisit the CIP with the FDOT, that question comes up, is there any hint yet that runway extension is in the 5-year window? Is there somebody flying, in this instance, really large Gulfstream family or larger aircraft to justify that? Or is there an industry or business that comes along, and that could happen in any year? In 2021, if anyone approached the city and approached the airport and said, I want to come base at Palatka and I want to fly, and I'm just making this up, I want to fly a 737 and I want to fly charters to South America. You can immediately turn the switch on for this project and take it out of 2025 and move it up earlier. You still have that option. Now, it would impact funding to other projects, but it's in the CIP, it's in the master plan, it's on the airport layout plan drawings. So if that catch-22 came about quicker and a real need, you could accelerate it several years.
Yeah, and I don't know the right answer on this, but I think Dana would probably agree. Also, we just don't make the cut sometimes when somebody looks at and doesn't see that we have that runway long enough. They just mark us off the list. We don't get considered. So again, I don't know what the right answer is. I just didn't know if that was how they fund it.
Correct. In almost all instances, runways are not extended in the state of Florida with either state or federal money until there is a specific user and aircraft that needs that runway.
Okay. And then I'm going to sit down and let you go through, but before John throws something at me. So I'm just going to ask while I'm standing up. So anywhere in any of this funding, is there any way you can get any funding for the painting of the hangars that are at the airport?
There is not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. All right, any other comments or thoughts at this point about what we're talking about with these points, or these projects? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Okay, so most of the projects that you're going to see on all the pages, there's more on this FDOT slide than any other slide here, Greg. So next slide, please. This is the FAA slide. They do not plan 5 years in advance, even though you can make a CIP request, but they only look in the 2 to 3 year period. The first project is in the lower left part of the screen. That is the west section of Taxiway Alpha, and that is actually under design right now, and the FAA is proposing to give the city a grant in fiscal year 2021, next summer to fall, approximately $1 million in grant funds. It is the oldest piece of airfield pavement on the entire airport right now. It's in excess of 20 years old. When that is done, then the FAA interest is going to the last segment of Taxiway Bravo and the fuel farm apron. Those are also in the 20-year time frame of age. They need to be rehabbed. And then there's also another project to purchase select portions of the runway protection zone and the approach on the east end of the runway. If you recall, a few years back, we did an obstruction removal project on the approach areas on the east. They were actually affecting the instrument approaches being turned off at night by the FAA, being NOTAM'd out. And that's going to happen again in the future. It just is. There's tall pine trees, primarily on the north tree line, that it is in the city's best interest to simply get control of those trees, and get control of that property. Voluntary acquisition, if people want to sell their land, great. If they don't, we don't have to get it. But there will be some funding out there in a few years to go out and look at voluntary acquisitions, either of the property or of simply an easement to remove the trees. So the FAA has some dollars scheduled for that in the future. And again, they don't look out 5 years. They look at basically one project per year. Those are the 3 years you see right now. Taxiway A to the west, then taxiway B and the fueling apron, and then buying some land so you can have the ability to remove trees for the eastern approach to the airport.
All right, any questions or comments on this slide?
One thing to add, Ashton, needs some help running down. Gentleman, he's got money to buy a little piece of property right here that we talked about. I need help running down, I guess, the executive trips or with somebody who is involved with Mr.
Frank Comer.
Comer. Mr. Comer, said he was in Martin, I think he's passed. And I'm just not having anybody down who knows Mr. Comer. We wanted to buy a property, a number of years ago from him, but now he's passed. I need help if anybody knows any.
How big a piece of property is it?
It's a small little sliver, an acre, it's probably half an acre or something.
I think it's
like
less than that, John. I think it's more like a quarter of an acre, I believe.
that. It's right in the nasty little corner. We get dinged on for tree obstruction because it's very close to I-shaped approach.
Frank Comer. Is it Frank Comer?
Frank or Sylvester?
I don't know. I just know.
Anyway, it's Mr. Comer from Barton. I think it's-
There's more than one Mr. Comer involved,
Yeah.
just FYI.
You know, his sons, Randy and Ronnie, I knew them. But here's
Could you recap that so I could hear? I couldn't hear any of that. Could you just give me a brief recap?
Dana, there's a small piece of property on Moody Road. It's actually it's north of the runway, and on the east side of Moody Road is a small parcel of land. It actually has a grouping of pine trees that are the closest pine trees to the eastern approach. And a Mr. Comer owns that land, and John mentioned that apparently he is deceased. And we're trying to find somebody in the family that would be interested in speaking with the city about trying to buy a small parcel of land. Again, it's the closest one to the runway. You think it's about, John, I think it's like 0.25 or 0.27 acres. It's a pretty small piece. But it's the most critical, most logical piece of land that the city would have an interest in purchasing. And there actually still is some funding left in an existing state grant. There's a small balance left that could be put towards that purchase, whether it's the appraisal or the purchase itself. But that's a parcel John's talking about.
And do you know how long that money will be available to us?
Well, that money's going to be available for a while because that money that in that land acquisition grant with the state is the same money that's going to fund the access road extension to the east. So it was a phased project by the DOT. The first phase of the grant was to buy the land, and then in a future year, and I think it might be as early as this June and July, additional funding will be put inside that grant to take the land that you purchased, the 5 acres between the Moose Lodge and the storage facility, to build the access road to the east.
I thought that money was tied to the money we used to purchase that land.
It is.
A couple of years ago.
It is. So it's
Is it 5 years?
It is, but when the DOT gives you your next round of funding to design and construct the access road to make that parcel usable, the PTGA will extend again. There will be an
Oh.
extension of the time.
Oh, nice.
But we
Kyle?
also still have the
Okay,
remaining
Kyle,
20 whatever $1,000 from the original 300 that was allocated for land acquisition,
So
which you already used.
So
most
there's-
of it.
So there's money remaining because
Okay.
the city did not use all of the 300,000 to buy the 5 acres. So there's more money remaining. And those are the funds that we're talking about to possibly approach the Comer family to buy that small piece. And that land acquisition was the start of the purchase to extend the roadway to the east, to do a loop road through the airport and have a new eastern entrance to the airport where you can loop all the way through the airport from east to west. So everybody who's coming from downtown does not have to drive along Route 100, wait in the lane where the cars are going quite a bit faster and turn in, because there's a traffic cut, there's a median and right at the new entrance. If you actually are driving from downtown towards the airport right now and you slow down a little bit between the Moose Lodge and the storage area, you can see the median cut where the new entrance will be to the eastern entrance of the airport.
That's your own turn lane. That's just
Correct.
good safety issue.
Correct. So any questions on the blue projects, which are the FA projects? Okay, next slide, please. If you could maybe, there we go, perfect. So these are the green projects. These are the unfunded projects, which, you know, there is a consistent interest, you know, talking with John and of needs for the airport. It's three. One is an aircraft wash rack. There is no dedicated area to wash aircraft on the airport. The second is to build an emergency generator at the fuel farm. We have two emergency generators on the airport now. One is at the terminal, and one is at the electrical vault. A logical third place for a generator is at the fuel farm. And I just want to let everybody know that we already tried to figure out if there was a way to not need three generators. Could we run the fuel farm from the vault? Can we run the terminal from the vault? Can we run the vault from the terminal? And the distances, because of the thickness of the line, there's just no way to run an emergency power 1,000 feet. It just, you cannot push the amount of electrical need through the cables. It just doesn't work. So, but we looked at it numerous times, actually 3 times now. So there's a long-term need to have an emergency generator at the fuel farm. The other project is a hangar project. There's always been an interest and discussion that the old terminal building would serve as a really good corporate office if we were to build a set of corporate hangars to the west of the old terminal, basically facing towards the fuel farm. There's 5 or 6 nice tall pine trees in that area. Just a very logical area to build it so that you have the office. You don't have to build the hangars and build the office, because the old terminal could serve as your corporate office. But there is no funding to put 2 hangars there, but you can put 2. I think, Matt, I think we have 60 by 60s proposed there in the past.
Sounds right.
Either that or 50 by 50. So very sizable corporate hangars, but there are no funds identified for that. And then the fourth project is down on the bottom of the screen, back in the industrial park, on the southwest quadrant of the airport, a land area that the city cleared and made ready for development. It's inside the fence. Lots of people have expressed private interest in putting private hangars over there and building a taxiway to 1735, but that hasn't happened. You can put 10 small hangars over there. You can put a corporate operation there, a maintenance hangar. It doesn't have to be somebody who really cares whether they're in the main terminal area, whether they just want to store an airplane or do a business operation that doesn't involve co-locating with the terminal. And it's a perfectly ready, developable piece of land right now. But again, there's no funds to build the taxiway or the hangars. We've always thought that would somewhat be private, but again, there's no funding proposed yet for that green development area.
And then tell everybody about the business that's moving into the old CDR building right across the way. It's a company that specializes in building piping for refineries and power plants. They're moving equipment in there right now. And the owner of it owns 5 airplanes. Now, they're small airplanes. They're not jets and King Airs like we would like. They're the smaller airplanes, but let's hope that business takes off. And he might be interested in building hangars there for his airplane or growing his business into jets or King Airs. So more to come on that in next year or so. Same gentleman who is renting the old terminal building right now.
Thanks, John. Hey, Kyle Kaufman, are you able to talk for a moment? Are you with us?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you got?
Well, I just thought maybe this might be a good time for you to talk for a moment about DOT funding and what's happening in the district, and just give everybody a little update on the cuts and things you've seen and the lessened impact whatsoever to Palatka. I think everybody was
Absolutely. So we, the state has anticipated since the onset of COVID that there would be, impacts obviously to revenue. Kind of a shift to telework has obviously reduced fuel consumption, which is a large component of FDOT's funding. So over the last several months, leadership was ongoingly assessing those impacts. And as of last week, we got a breakdown of what it meant for DOT District 2 and specifically for the aviation program. Typically, our annual aviation budget is around $10 million. This year, in current year, we were asked to reduce by about a little under 30%, just under $3 million. So we went through, and I'll just give a very brief overview of how we looked at projects. We kind of broke projects into 4 separate categories, knowing we were going to have to prioritize them and ultimately cut some. The first group was projects that were tied to licensing standards and safety. Those were the first priority to fund. The second group of projects were projects that we had funded in previous years that were already in some stage of design and construction. We didn't feel it was fair to abandon projects that were ready to go to construction, already in construction and partially constructed. So that was the second group to prioritize. The third group was projects that were matches to FAA funding. And then that kind of left everything else that was not in one of those other categories. And at the end of the day, almost everything in that fourth category had to be removed in order to make the revenue reductions. Palatka was not impacted. A lot of this, unfortunately, just came down to luck as to what stage your project was in. So good news for Palatka, they were not impacted. Don't know what it'll mean moving forward. You know, we all hope that the economy rebounds, takes off, and things get back to normal as quick as possible. So we'll continue to assess and communicate any out-of-year impacts as we become aware of them.
Thanks,
Thank
Kyle.
you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. Just to
Kyle.
confirm the cold hard facts of what Kyle said, that District 2 in Northeast Florida has about a $10 million airport CIP. They took about $3 million out of it in the current year, but not $1 from Palatka.
That's beautiful.
Good.
Yep. Thank you again, Kyle. That's very good. Does anybody have any questions for Kyle while he's on line? All right, beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Kyle.
much.
And then the last slide is kind of the opportunity slide. It's not necessarily associated with any physical facility, but it's more focused on what can the city and the airport do to market this land to bring business, hangars, revenue, opportunity to the airport. And the two, I think, most important ones are, first, the 5 acres of land between the Moose Lodge and the storage area. So the city is going to get a grant from the DOT to extend the access road and loop it all the way through the terminal area, including putting in sewer and water. So that 5 acres of open land is now going to have a road, sewer, and water. So how is the city going to make some money and use that parcel to help the airport, help the city, make some money? It's outside the fence right now, and we plan on it remaining outside the fence. However, it does touch the fence at Skydive Palatka. So is there something that we can do to look for a tenant and a way to develop that land, whether it's making money from buildings or just the land itself, making Skydive Palatka more viable, selling more fuel? All that is a part of the mix in terms of what to do with those 5 acres. I think the other area is in the southwest quadrant. We talked about the T hangar, or the taxiway and T hangars, which are basically the single-sided hangars in that area. Is there something that the city and the airport can be doing to encourage possibly private development of that parcel? If there's 10 more aircraft on the airport, possibly there's 5 or 10 people on the T hangar waiting list that can come together and develop that parcel and put together a condo association and do some private development in that area and team together and make that work. And I'm just throwing that out as one idea. The other 2 parcels are the frontage on Route 100, right in front of the main terminal right now, in the area between the fire station on Moody Road, where there is gate access into the airport right now, and runway 927. All these sites are ready to go. But again, I think that it's good to talk about the approach, or today, what type of interest people think are good fits for that land. And then whether it's this meeting or the next meeting, talking about what are the actions needed to try and get tenants to help develop that land, put people to work, sell fuel, and make money for the airport. So,
Andrew, thank you. That's and I'm not cutting you off here. I just want to make a comment, if I may. we talked many times as a board and as a group, about when we're going to get the growth. And I know we've all seen things come and got excited and then they don't fit or they weren't real. But we obviously have to be getting closer all the time. I was in Orlando yesterday and a comment was made, well, you guys are booming just like we are, and I wanted to say yes, but it's not happened to Putnam yet, right? We see it to the north and every side, but not here. But it is a very good discussion, what we can do to develop that. But I was thinking of the Skydive Palaca connection and how valuable that has been for 20 years or more to our community and our airport. And, it's one thing that stayed the same. And their competition is only to land, I hear. I don't skydive, so I don't know a lot about it, but I do love seeing the crowds. And they have a lot of crowds every good weather weekend, just about. And I like the idea of the new entrance 5 acres, maybe having some value to them so that when they have a crowd of people coming in to jump, they have a place to maybe put a camper. I don't know whether that's allowed or a dream that could fit, or maybe a place to even have more area to congregate, at least, to be right close to where they all jump and hang out. But, I think it's something that we have in our hand that we could grow with. And Art sure has been good to buy us fuel here and support us and bring a lot of folks here from other communities. So I don't know whatever everybody else thinks about all that, but we do need to put something on paper sometime, and we need sometime, I think, to entertain Art to see what his ideas are, if it's valid that we can move that way and support that as a part of our business plan.
So I'm not versed enough in the topic so that I know the trade-offs. And obviously, I'm not actively flying right now, but I know that sometimes a skydive operation is not seen as an asset to increase the activity. Parachutes falling out of the sky are not always a fun thing for pilots. But I don't know where the trade-off is, and I don't know how big of an impediment it is, and I don't know what the return is either. This would be something I think that, I would need to know more about personally is what's the return? I know we buy some fuel, but what is the city getting from that skydive operation? If we're talking about money, if you're talking about intrinsic stuff, that's a different consideration. But we're talking about revenue right now. So I just don't know what revenue we're getting from them, that is going to increase substantially by us making him have the availability of 5 acres, for instance. And that's not saying yes, no, or trying to throw water on it. I don't know. That'd be something that I'd be sure interested in seeing. And I don't know whether skydiving is a growing sport or the reason that we only have 2 airports that are in competition because people are skydiving us. I don't know any of that. Those are the questions that if I were looking at this from an economic perspective, I think I'd want to know, wouldn't you?
Yep, exactly.
So that's just my only thing.
I can help you out with some information. I was working in the land when our flight school that caused the airport to go over the threshold to qualify for enough operations for a control tower. Pilots wanted the control tower. Skydiving did not want the control tower, and it got very contentious. To the point of counting operations for a week, and the city council with it. And lo and behold, skydiving didn't win.
Did not win.
They did.
They did win.
They were successful keeping the tower out because of the revenue that would bring into the city. Skydive, but that's a world-class big operation.
And so ultimately, I think it's a city commission decision as to whether you value the intrinsic, the non-economic benefit of having a skydive operation or if you place emphasis on the economic side of things. And, but before I went to them, I want to have information to give them that would allow them to make an intelligent decision. Is just my point. So I'm not shutting the door on anything or discouraging anything. I'm just saying, for instance, the idea of the RV thing. I mean, if you have water and sewer out there, I mean, it's possible that the RV thing could be used by others as well. Depending upon, needs and things, for the festivals, fly-ins. I don't know, but those are the kinds of things that I think you'd have to have some economic assessments of what's the cost of putting it in, what's your expected return, et cetera. And those are the kinds of things that I think certainly are worthy of discussion, just from my perspective. But I think that you'd have to have a lot more information before you want to try to get buy-in in the commission on, making a dedication of that kind of a resource. My thought.
John, what did they bring to us on a typical weekend now without having any facilities? Skydive.
It's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes they're very busy and sometimes the weather's bad. But they market to the University of Florida and thrill-seeking college students. So they'll, typical weekend, they'll fill up their parking lot. The students that come over, they may not all jump, maybe just hanging out as friends.
But what do they pay? What does the city get out of it?
Monetarily.
Yeah, the fuel sales.
Fuel sale?
From the airport.
And
Of course, of course, their rent, 2, 4, 3 hangars and pay rent for the drops monthly.
so if they left, we'd lose a substantial
Yeah,
client.
one big hangar, 2 T hangars, the land lease.
But the
And the
land,
fuel
how much
sales.
is it?
About $380 a month.
$300 a month?
380.
Do people ever come and stay in hotels or for the entire weekend or, come from greater
Skydive.
distances?
Skydive Palatka would probably put some numbers together for you on them out there. They would be the person to do that.
I invited Art Schaefer, the president, to come to this meeting and talk a little bit about this, and he couldn't come. I've asked him to get in touch with Andrew and talk about where he is, possibly see his business going, or where it could go. So we'll get more information. I think it's certainly worth pursuing.
I'm certainly not, I think all ideas are worth investigating,
Wayne had a comment? Did you?
Oh, no, I'm good.
So, John, I had one more. Do you hear any reports of interference? Pilots are landing and taking off?
Not much. I don't get many people coming in going, I almost killed me. No. And the physics of it is the skydivers are really only in the area that airplanes are in the traffic pattern for a short period of time, to get down close to the ground. And the traffic pattern is 1,000 feet. How long does it take a skydiver to pass through 1,000 feet? And it's not that big of a hazard to.
Is he still broadcasting that he's about to let people out at certain altitude, et cetera, approximate location, heads up?
Yeah. And I listen to them. And, working in the land for a number of years really helped me keep an eye on this. And I listen to the radio calls. I'm hearing about making them. Sometimes I make them too fast, and I go down and say, slow down.
Do you hear anything complaint wise? No. Yeah, the only thing that I've heard, and I don't have a lot of activity, but is compliments on how beautiful it all is.
If Richard, our pilot in the background, you had any experiences, interactions with pilots?
Sorry, can't get my mask on there.
Let him
Do you
come
want
up
to
here.
speak in the mic, sir?
I don't speak loud, I don't need to come up there. Skydive Palatka does a very good job as far as their aircraft jump zones. They announce that they're getting ready to drop in 5 minutes and 2 minutes. Do not overfly the airport. So traffic patterns, they do an excellent job. I listen to them all the time. And so I find that very good. The biggest problem is, and it's not a problem, is when they let down, they're pretty quick at getting in. And they announce where they are at all times. So I think that that's a very good operation.
Thank you, sir.
May I have his name for the record, please?
Yes, Richard.
Cunningham.
All right, any other comments on this, this 5 acres and the usage of it while we're on that discussion or topic?
So I just have a generic question. I don't want to cause you guys too much trouble, but years ago, we had what the city termed a through the fence operation. It was the Yawkin hangars there. They're not Yawkin hangars anymore. They might be part of that storage facility that's, north and on the east corner of the airport. And all I ever heard, because I had an airplane at one, all I ever heard was complaints from the FBO about, the through the fence operation. And ultimately, the city dug a ditch to keep us from accessing the runway. True story. So of course, all I heard was negative about costing the city revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Have thoughts changed about that now? It's not a rhetorical question. I'm asking, is that not any longer considered?
No, yeah, through the fence operations are still highly discouraged.
Discouraged?
Just discouraged. If an airport, there are some that are actually grandfathered in because they've been there so long and they have to pay an access fee. If that T hangar was there today, you probably could petition the FAA and say it's been here so long, but each T hangar has to pay $50 a month to have the right to access the airport. But to put in a new one, like if you try to do a new T hangar on private land and have it access the airport, the FAA would say, no, you're not doing a new one.
So how does that, Andrew, affect the conversation about having T hangars on that private property that y'all described on the southwest side of the airport?
Actually, the parcel that we're looking at there, the lower left, is still city land. It's airport land. But the question was to have somebody come in and privately fund a hangar on city airport land, which hasn't happened.
And then to put an operational gate without a car to come in and drive it. Control with a car.
Appreciate the clarification.
Anybody else have thoughts on that 5 acres while we're on it? So I think maybe an action plan would be to get with Art and come up with some thoughts from his perspective and some economic numbers to help justify what he thinks about, and to see how that goes maybe in our next meeting if we can. That's one of our top numbered projects, right? That was number 3, I believe. And of course, we know the value of the road, the entrance, being a safety factor. We've talked about that for years, and Mr. Evans and Kyle had a lot to do with that location for our entrance. So I think that's well supported.
What we can do to just make them perhaps look a little nicer, a little prettier, we'll put together a simple graphic that show these 4 parcels and just not even with a concept of what to put on them, because as soon as we draw something, your eye goes right to that, and that's what everybody thinks. But we'll just send something out before next month, an 11 by 17 with these 4 parcels on it, just so it stays on everybody's mind that they are available, the size of the acreages, and then see where that goes.
What about a real estate connection? We talked about that many times, hitting up somebody that's commercial real estate and seeing if they can help bring some activity or interest to something that we have.
Judd, I think there's 2 things. The first part of the real estate connection, the immediate question tends to be, what could they put on that land? And that's where, it gets to be tricky, because somebody might want to put something on that land that you don't want them to put on the land.
Right.
But it's still obviously an opportunity, as long as there are some parameters shared with what would be compatible with the airport. And then secondly, I think that there still could be some reasonably inexpensive marketing possibilities in the aviation community throughout magazines and periodicals that Palatka has land available for X, Y, or Z. And again, you get to determine what that would be. if we were going to use the southwest quadrant, we could draw up a hangar plan and say, Palatka, Florida, there's 4 acres available right now for 10 hangars. Come build. We know that's probably logically what's going to happen in the southwest quadrant. The other 3, not so sure. But you can still put some parameters on it that it's subject to compatibility with the city and the airport, that you want it to be aviation compatible, you'd like it to be aviation related, but it doesn't have to be, because all these areas are not inside the fence. So they don't have to be aviation use. If they're compatible, they put people to work and provide revenue to the city and the airport. It doesn't have to be aviation.
Can I ask a question if there are consultants available or experts available who provide a real product? Sure, anybody can generate a report, but people who provide a real product as to highest and best use of what you have in a given area. Do you follow what I'm saying?
There are done. There's a few specialty firms that do that, and again, we could request proposals or any type of discussion, or just frankly give this to them and say, what do you think? How would you approach it?
In your experience, do they provide a valued product or not? I mean, I don't know what they would take into account. Do they provide a valued product that has a real viable suggestion in it when they do their kinds of studies?
They do, but I will tell you that the heavy lift tends to be implementing what's on there and finding the tenant that meets those parameters. Like, I would think that this group has a pretty good idea, and you could probably get halfway there of what you want the parameters to be. But there are specialty firms in economic development and this type of thing that can bring up things that we wouldn't think about.
And I think, Don, it's so important because we're at the verge of having to have new people come here. I mean, it's just going to happen. And we've said that for 20 years, but we're sure really close now, especially with what's going in, in Green Cove. And there's no other place, I think, for them to come but to Putnam.
Yeah, I think it was a question. I don't know, but I was just wondering whether there are people that look at your geographical proximity to everything, look at what's around, think about the prospects of whether you could support perhaps a freight service or some kind of limited charter service. But I know you wouldn't from Palatka, but are you close enough at some point so that people will drive to your airport and catch a charter, but that kind of thing, or something else maybe I'm not even thinking about that the people in the industry day in day out see happening, trends and things. That's I'm asking. I don't know if that's even. I don't even know if there are people out there who have that kind of knowledge, or if everybody's just taking a guess and say if you build it, they will come. The Field of Dreams concept. I don't know.
I don't know if Dana can hear me, but I was wondering if the economic development arm of the county through the chamber could provide some marketing material or at least get it started.
Dana, can you hear Melissa?
Yes, I can. I was also raising my hand to let y'all know there are consulting firms, just like Avalanche, who's very familiar already with our city and our county, that might be affordable to engage, that do study parcels of land and make recommendations. We also market the entire inventory if we have the information in a way that we can put it on our 3 or 4 different online site and buildings pages. We've got it with Jack's USA and with the NFEDP and on our own site. So when we get it to where it's marketable, we can certainly put it out there for all of the people looking at Florida. Did that answer Melissa's question about can we help market it?
Well, so I think it's even one step prior to that, Dana. Do you have any facilities to help develop a brochure or a page that describes it? Or maybe Andrew already has it. You've got to have a product to put out on your sites.
Melissa, about 3 years ago, we got a grant from DAO. The county actually got the grant for us to do some marketing materials for the county's business park and a market study. And part of that process ended up renaming the business park, the business and aviation park. and a nice electronic and printed brochure and marketing materials. But I don't have resources or the information. I don't know if that's a grant available that we could look for to make a nice piece for the airport. But I think before you make the piece, it goes back to Don's point about getting someone who's an expert, whether it's Avalanche or somebody else, to tell y'all what the best use and following the trends. So we would have a better idea of what that piece, who that piece needs to appeal to.
Is it totally out of the ballpark that we would be a port of entry? Is it just not feasible because of our geographic location?
Don, the reason that in the past is to provide the customs clearinghouse at the airport, the operational cost of the clearinghouse is just extravagant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and we talked about that heavily about 18 months ago.
Had folks over.
Their offices come down and talk to us.
Right. They came down and talked to us, but it still ended up at establishing the facility with U.S. Customs and Border Protection with their parameters and what they need dictated nationally from Indianapolis. And it just, the facility, it's not a casual facility. It's not using an old office. It's literally building an international arrival center that has an incinerator and a small jail cell. There's a lockup. No, it's IT. It's IT needs. It's providing a vehicle. I mean, it's a specialty facility, and then comes the staffing of it and the cost of you staffing and reimbursing Customs and Border Protection. Sounds like a good idea, and even from a business and aviation perspective, it might make some sense. But the dollars and cents of what it costs to build and operate the facility every year, that's when it doesn't get to be feasible.
The number that I remember was $500,000 to get the site ready and $350,000 a year to maintain their needs.
Right.
That may not be exactly right. Huh?
That did not include people.
Right. Yep. So there's various things.
Well, back when I was a prosecutor, we were a port of entry at the airport.
Yeah. A little bit different. Kinda. Okay, well, we got 1 minute left. Any more questions? All right, well, Andrew, thank you very much. I think you gave us lots to think about. So
Thanks,
next
Andrew.
meeting, and we will, yes, sir. Did you-
I just said thank you.
Oh, we'll have some more to add to the same agenda, and we will have art available. And I think our next meeting is supposed to be on December 2nd. Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I have a quick question for John, directed at John. We're one of the few airports in Northeast Florida that does not have an operating AWOS. We're also one of the higher traffic airports, non-towered. Do you have a projected date when our AWOS gets up and running?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I'll be pleased if we can get it back up in a month and a half.
It's been what, 3 months?
It got hit by lightning, and it's been very difficult getting the insurance lined up and getting the quotes and getting insurance going. And now the company has to build that specialized computer that matches our sensors, and they're a sole source company, and that's gonna slow us
That's the same
down.
computer used in the flight planning area?
Is that, it's the flight planning,
Yeah.
those computers
So
down there.
Transients or local people don't have any way of doing flight planning also. Thank you.
And I've been talking with the company that makes it, and I asked them for an estimate, and they said, we're kind of overwhelmed with all the lightning damage that's happened at other airports, and I said, how long do you think it will take you to build our specialized computer? I said, a month or so. He said, yeah, a month or so.
Okay, thank you, John.
And that there's a potential other element to it. We need those computers to determine if there's been any damage to the sensors out on the airfield. There's a chance we could install the mother computer just to find out the sensors out on the airport need work too. We won't know that until we can hook the computer up. I hope not. I don't think there's damage to the sensors, but I just hope that doesn't happen.
All right, very good.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was just wondering if there's any way to build in some redundancy so you have an extra one or something if it happens
Oh, yeah.
again.
I had an extra one. And unfortunately, I got hit by lightning last year and we went through the backup. I'll check into the backup for this next system. And kind of about 2 years ago, we got a letter that said, your system is no longer going to be supported. Do you want to upgrade to this new $18,000 system? Didn't have 18,000 in my budget. So I asked our maintenance person, does he know of any airports that are upgrading? Quincy happened to be upgrading. I contacted Quincy and I said, would you please sell me your old computer system? Keep the thing, I'll keep it in, it's the same one as ours, same sensors and everything. And so we kept that. And I thought I was being wise about avoiding the $18,000 upgrade. I guess it wound up being a good thing because now our insurance is going to pay for that upgrade because they don't make the old system that got taken out.
Okay, we're over time 5 minutes, so I think we probably need to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Say aye. Motion carried. Thank you. We'll meet again soon. Thank you so much, Dana. Appreciate you all.
Thanks, bye y'all.
Bye-bye.
That ain't-
Thanks, Dana.